Yeah, yeah, that's closer, so we get it. We always do that. Nice try.
Good evening, call to order the Board of Trustees work session for November 6th, 2023. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. First item we have is ARB application 121 East Main Street. Applicant.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Nicola Budai. I'm the owner of Flames Pizza and Takeout. I've been there for about 7.5 years. We've been working very hard to make that business going, and so far, thank God, it's working well. We're trying to beautify the building a little bit so it looks presentable. Our neighbors across the street, they did an excellent job. And next door as well. So we're just trying to comply with everything that we need to in order to make it work. And I think that I had the architect file out some plans, but he had his mother-in-law sick, so he couldn't show up. But I believe I don't know. Tony or somebody else has take the set of plans I have instead.
They have the plans.
Oh, good, okay.
So, basically, the restaurant now has 3 separate awnings. They're looking to take those awnings down and build one, canopy type awning across the whole front.
Right.
So they can have seating underneath it, and also, it'll be all white, as you see there with the wording on it, clean up the front.
President. President.
Yes, sir. We just want to tell the architect on page A09. With the town of Ellsworth, not Greenberg.
Yeah. It has some comments also to address. But I'll point that out. So there's some structural issues that he has to come back with. But
Trustee Evans? Okay. Thank you, trustee Lopez. Okay. Just make an appointment to come back and see Tony.
Well,
and he'll go over
I'll
it.
call your architect. I'll let him know.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Have a good night.
Good night.
We have our guest with us at the Smith, we're gonna go over the self-storage moratorium. Welcome, good to see you again.
Good evening, St. Dirk.
Yeah, so in furtherance of the moratorium, the village needs to do some, some thinking about how they want to proceed with these kinds of developments, whether you want to proceed with them, how the zoning might be amended to address concerns currently. For example, one of the items is, anybody's point of a self-storage needs to go from required parking of 180 units down to 40 parking spaces. That's just, that's, it's untenable. I think, you'll want to have things like that for your zoning. And basically, we asked Dave to come over to, maybe discuss it a little bit, the goals of the moratorium, but also to hear what your thinking is on various issues. And I know you won't all agree on everything, but we want to give Dave some directions as far as what he should be looking into, and looking into, for the board as a whole to consider. 6 months from, I forget exactly when it was, but it's changed in September, I think, back from July. So we have 6 months to take a look at, come up with recommendations that this board would be satisfied with.
One of you addressed that, I was thinking it was the parking, no sense having that crazy number, make it more realistic to what it is.
Typically, in my experience, these types of facilities are well over parked. Just don't get the type of volume. You see it all over the place. There's low activity, and typically, I was mentioning this to Dan the other day, that these types of facilities typically follow multifamily residential. And it kind of makes sense because you've got apartments, and you have people who, for whatever reason, they're downsizing or they're transitioning or they're moving, and they need a place to store stuff, they need a place that's convenient to where, if you look in Elmsford, the number of multifamily apartments that are in and around not only the village, but just the surrounding areas, they're big. And that's why these types of facilities tend to locate where we've got multifamily developments. I think some of the kind of the planning issues, I know that when I first started working with the village, Armin DeMora had, there was there was an issue about a policy issue about car sale lots, and that was not a highest and best use of the village cities. They kind of said, no, we're going to limit those types of uses. And throughout the course of your thinking about planning of the village, you've done that with other types of uses like hotels, the extended stay hotels, where they're more often the periphery of the village. So you can locate them in places where it's more acceptable with respect to access to the road network and utilities. So I think the self-storage uses are fairly benign when it comes to traffic. They don't generate a whole lot of additional retail activity, but they're kind of their presence in the community, and you have at least one right now just down the street, and you have one approved, and the other one is in the process.
There's one older one, and then across from that is one that was.
That's
approved last year,
right.
yeah.
So the one that's already there is kind of like an example, it's been there for a number of years. You know, it's at an active corner where you don't necessarily want to have a lot of additional retail activity. So it's almost like you have to look at it on a case by case basis. But I would be interested in hearing more from you all, about the acceptance of those types of uses, the location, whether it makes sense to have them. I don't think it necessarily makes sense to have it right in the downtown, because that's where you want to promote your foot traffic and retail activity. But maybe in extremities, I don't know, that's something that's.
Second concern I had was location, like you said, it'd be interesting if you can make some recommendations, like we did the car dealerships on the outside. And we did something else for years there, I forget, when going on the east and the west side.
It was the,
What was it, the restaurants?
Yes, and
So,
right.
was it? It was the
Drive-through.
drive.
You know, it'd be interesting to see what you think about, in my opinion, anyway, where they should go, like you just said, not downtown. And the third one would be is, you know, do you have any knowledge of, which I brought up to the guy at Julio's. I said to him, I said, at some point, this is gonna be oversaturated. You know, I mean, right now, it might be sustainable because of people downsizing and the amount of apartment buildings that we built and are just in or just outside our village, that people, like you said, have no space, but when I said to that guy that night, I said, well, what happens when it gets saturated and then I'm stuck with an empty building now? You know, can those, in your experience, have any of those buildings been converted to something else afterwards without knocking them down? It'd be interesting to see, you know, if someone who did go out of business, what the use became after that. Because, you know, I mean, there's not a lot of windows, there's not a lot of this, you know, so what could it be and what did some of them turn into? I'm sure some of them went out of business someplace. It'd be interesting to see what, because at some point, like I said, I mean, if this guy opens and somebody else opens and et cetera, there's too many. We're stuck with an empty building, which if it can't be retrofitted to something else without spending too much money, then what is the person gonna do with it? It's gonna sit empty, which is worse.
Absolutely. I'm hard pressed, to think of a self-storage facility that's actually run out.
Yeah, it is.
In Westchester County.
Yeah. No, it
Because
is.
the makeup, but it's interesting, I'm meeting with a guy tomorrow. Who, is a friend of mine, a client of mine who does this type of work, and so I'll ask him about.
Just for heck of it, some business. Yeah.
What's that?
It'd be interesting just to,
Yeah, same here,
because it's a strange building. It's not like an office building, it's not a retail building, you know, what could it be used for if, you know, and that would also be the point. I mean, let's say we decided, which I'm sure we don't, to build 10 more, you know, but then, you know, the 11th one or something goes out of business and, you know, what do we do, you know?
there are ways that you can. Limit the number of just
Right.
geographical.
Yeah, no,
locations,
like
and
we
we've
did.
done that before with other types of uses.
Right, the adult use, we did that where we put it, it can only go, yeah.
Right, exactly.
So right now they're permitted in pretty much every zone except for residential. Because there's nothing in our code that strictly says you can't have them, the way our code's written. So they could be in the light industrial business, central business, neighborhood business, and the business overlay. So that's basically anywhere in the village except residential.
Anybody else got some idea? And just start looking at.
Yeah, and you know, in the close proximity, there are others, just you mentioned, I think. Go up 9A, there was the Westies and
Two was,
and then they built another,
Yeah. And largely,
yes.
well, I'm also consulting to build a new one.
And then now Carriage, it's gonna open short.
Almost across from Stop and Shop.
So we can look to the market.
There's one by the train station too.
Yes, okay.
no matter what you do, they all over the place. And I tell you, I used to work for a self-storage company, well, a long time ago.
I worked with a company for about 7.5 years. And the question that you just asked, Mr. Mayor, if that building can be retrofitted to something else. And the way they build those buildings, the way it's constructed, I see that impossible. Not one of them, so just change it into something else. I think it's gonna have to be demolished.
Pretty much. I mean, you can turn into a warehouse, a data center, but nobody's building six-story data center. You know, that's about it, right, that I can think of.
Way too many of those buildings, way too many.
It's usually the other way around, when you have a, like, for instance, in, on Network Avenue in Yonkers, where they've got industrial buildings, and those have been replicated to self-storage. You're right. If you do it the other way, it's retrofitted for another use. Probably. But we'll look at that, we'll see if there's any examples of that.
Our purpose for being here tonight was to find out, do you want to not see any at all? Do you want to see them on the outskirts of the village, just in the industrial zone? If you have any ideas, because Dave and I, we're gonna sit down and come up with ideas, but we don't know what you were all thinking, so we want to get some thoughts, so.
My 2 cents.
Yeah.
What we have now, I think is way more than enough. I don't think that we should allow any more of those buildings to be built within the village. I think within 1 or 2 square miles, we have a whole bunch of, I don't see the need for another building to be built in the village. I really don't. And I know they're very convenient. But I think we have more,
I think the question has to be asked before we do anything is how does this benefit the residents that we serve, right? And I think at this point, to echo Trustee Lopez's sentiments, I'm failing to see the overall benefit to the daily lives of residents, right? The amount of people who are just up in arms over more being built, is palpable. So my thought process, as opposed to specific areas, it should be also tied to a number of them. Because we could put it in a specific area, but my fear would be whatever area it is that we designate or zone for it, we could easily see 1 or 2 pop up and then go with storage row. So I think there has to be a number, whether that conversation is around specific units, whether that conversation is around X amount of facilities are allowed per X amount of residents that live within, the village, something along those lines. Those things have to be tied together. But if we're thinking about it from a zoning perspective, it needs to be on the outskirts. It needs to be a light industrial zoning, because if we're talking about that high traffic area, we're talking about driving through the village. No one's driving through the village and, on Thursday night thinking, hey, let me stop off at storage unit. Right, like that's not a real thing. So they need to be in places where that is their destination, that is their point, as opposed to something that people are continuously and constantly saying.
Agree with my 2 colleagues here. And the other thing is that we always had things that would draw people here. Not just, like Trustee Evans, Trustee Lopez said about, sustaining the residents, but, and I'll use Burger King, for example. She made no money off the people of Bed Bath & Beyond, but she's making a ton of money off the car dealerships. People were in and out Bed Bath & Beyond, same with the self-storages. There's not enough people either to generate traffic to stop and get gas or lunch or, anything else. Even if everybody did, you have 5 customers a day. When you have something that's, we want people to come back and then go to restaurants, we want them to shop, we want to do things. If there's nothing to draw them here, then they won't come. And then, our residents really have to shop out of the village now too, because there isn't really anything left here for us to shop. Most of our retail is full, but it's services and things like that, and a couple of delis and restaurants and stuff, but there's nothing, you can't really go shopping for clothes or anything else, or kitchen stuff like Bed Bath & Beyond anymore. So that, is also a concern of if we build them what, it's not drawing people to come here, there's no reason to
in and out, and to dropping off the stuff and going home. They're not coming on Thursday night to go to the storage unit. Yeah.
I think that one of the considerations also you have to keep in mind is you're talking about the residents and whatnot. You don't see the benefit, but it's a rateable assessment. It's gonna be a brand new building, whatever the building, with low impact. I mean, so that's just, with less traffic, less municipal services, I think, they probably have a dumpster, but I don't know what else they typically use, but these are all issues. I'm not suggesting one is more important than the other.
I agree with Dan, that was kind of my thought process, particularly if they're replacing things that are really a problem for us. Like, yeah. Like West Main Street.
Man, I understand what Tony, with Matt and Nelson are talking about, but I'm just afraid of getting something in that's, something that's a worse attraction. And having to turn them away. I mean, at least if we can limit them by maybe on that population density, that's a good way. We may be close to where the limit is now. And the next guy that gets in, he's the last one that can get in, but I'm just afraid that we'll end up with like a property that like the only thing will attract will be something that's totally desirable.
And I see the point of, we want to replace something that maybe deemed as a problem with something else, but I would also argue if we're going to replace a problem, we should replace it with a solution. And I don't think a storage unit is a solution to what it is you may deem that problem to be. I get the sense of the less traffic and they're looking for something to go to. Our residents are looking for something to draw them in. So there is a give and take here, right? Yeah, there's an economic perspective of a tax revenue that's really not going to pull as much from you, but at the same time, they don't want to see them. And I think the residents of this village are smart enough to know what those trade-offs are, and I think it's one they're willing to make to not be known as the storage capital, because that's exactly how they're beginning to feel. I'm getting the sense that we're becoming a place where you come, you go, and they're not staying, because as the mayor just mentioned, storage unit, you're in, you're out. And they're looking for those things that get people to stay.
I know when we did the adult use and the other things, we had to make a place for them. Is this one of them that has to or no?
You should codify the code so that, going forward, if you want to find a location, perhaps where they could go, you want to have it regulated.
I mean, like, we have a bunch out there now, and they are where they are in their zoning. Can you totally stop any more from coming in, or do you have to designate an area like we did other places to go into certain places?
Okay, so yeah, so you already allow them in your zone, so and they're located right now, so you permitted them as a use within the village. So if you wanted to take the step of completely excluding any additional uses from going forward, you could probably craft legislation that will allow them, if that's what you're looking at.
I always like to have all the answers for the question, my dear.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, we don't, like, they don't use, I mean, I keep on referring to that, but by law, we had to give them an area, and we made it. Not by the school, somebody fit for the school, somebody fit for this, et cetera, et cetera. So the only place it could go would be.
We tailored it basically.
Right. I mean, so this doesn't have to.
They had to have a place to go because they had an application. For example, in your code, you can't slaughter cattle anywhere in the village.
Right.
So today, if your law that you passed that doesn't allow any more would have to have a memorializing reason for that.
Correct.
Right. And that's something.
Memorializing reason would be,
We have to
So
make,
many square feet of it now, so many locations, et cetera.
that's okay, that's the question.
But if somebody walked in, well, we had the moratorium in place, let's say we didn't have the moratorium. Somebody walked in the door, then we put the moratorium in place. We couldn't zone them out
Right, just like happened,
with the,
Exactly.
with romantic people, correct?
Okay. Whichever way the board is interested in going, it still needs to be codified in a way that Tony can interpret it. So,
Right.
so it's, so there is a use of storage. You know, in the code, or it's banned or whatever.
One of the safest ways to control, like, to say, code allows it, so you're not excluding it, is to put it in places where you control the property. Where you control the property,
Like we did.
for example, our highway garage. Our watershed, our, so, parks. I wouldn't say parks, because, but those other places, industrial, in those places that are never gonna change. So there is a place, but it's gonna be impossible to do it.
Consider what we did.
Right.
Any other ideas for Dave to? Any thoughts, guys?
What I would suggest we do is we give you really sort of two options. One is not at all. And one is in these limited areas. And memorializing for both of those, it's pretty much gonna be the same. And then let you choose. I'll show you where those places are that it could, that isn't Main Street, that isn't 9A, that isn't in the middle of the business district, those types of things. That's my suggestion. Or we'll be beat our heads or say, well, what did they want to say?
We can repair that.
Yeah. We probably have that done tomorrow. Okay.
anybody else, any suggestions? Anything more you want to ask of us or
No,
no?
I think I've got plenty of direction.
Get some homework.
Yeah, good, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Steve. I'll coordinate with your staff here on, getting something together and then on time. So, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
VOC meeting, gonna be for the mic, and I go to that, so something the weather.
Actually, it's probably one of the quickest VLC meetings we've had in a while.
You were implying that. I said, are you implying that I'm there?
No. It was, a couple people, they didn't argue with each other too long because somebody kept them in line. I gave you the agenda, I'll just go through that real quick. The food scrap recycling, we went over the grant, which I had spoken about at the last meeting. And it was, it looked like the request was gonna be for 100,000, which meant that it would be about 7,000 to each of the communities. We had authorized going up to 25. So that was put in, by Irvington and the rest of us last week. The town A budget item. There was an email sent around from the supervisor. Telling the villages, the mayors, et cetera, which I think I forwarded to you all at one point, that he wanted to move the nature center cost into the A budget from the B budget. And the theory behind that was that that would be one of the first steps in lightening the B budget and in anticipation of lost revenue with Edgemont becoming a village. Not a good reason to even hook your horse and buggy up to. And the mayor of Ardsley, because one of the things that impacts that, which I think I had pointed out to the town attorney, and then it became apparent that it was correct, that doing that wasn't allowed by the FINRA. And to be able to do something like that, they would have to amend the FINRA law. And the mayor from Ardsley, and justly so, said, I would never support amending the FINRA law unless it included letting us all use the village pool or the town pool, which is in the village garden. So it kind of got left at that. She wrote a couple of emails back to Paul, and it kind of kind of went away real quick. I actually even asked him by email to, tell me in the first place why it's in the B budget, just to justify it, and he didn't even give me an answer because he couldn't. So that one was, number 3, the pro housing. What that really had to do with, it doesn't apply to us at this point. 2 issues. One, the state is issuing certifications to communities that are doing certain things with housing and improving housing, and rent control and all that, and really none of them apply to us. The increase in housing, we've already met those goals, but some of the other things, some of these communities have back from the 70s rent control apartments that are based on tax credits that we don't have that type of thing here. And some of them are running out, some of them have been changed. And I think Hastings and one of the other ones are filing for their certification because they fall into all those ballparks, and we don't. We just don't have I think not Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow does, just out of default because of all the residential building that's going on. So that one really didn't apply to us either. The community choice aggregate survey, they had put out a survey to the municipalities asking if we were involved in it, how we felt about it. If we weren't involved in it, why? We completed that at the meeting. We did have a discussion about that a little bit. It's as I said from day, well, we each opinioned as to if we weren't involved in it, why, and ours really from day one was that it was an opt-out program, not an opt-in program. And they don't agree with me, but I made it known that and I gave them a couple examples of some people, and actually one of the things that one of the mayors talked about was that the opt-out, they're looking at probably changing some of those because they figured that the automatic opt-out, opt-in was hurting some low-income people. Because what's happened over the last contract is the price is higher than Con Ed. Under the first contract, for a while, the Sustainable Westchester was a bit lower, but it's never been lower on the green. It's always been substantially higher, and for the better part, probably 80% of the time period, it's been much higher. So if I'm, Mrs. Jones, 85 years old, lives down the street, and I'm on a fixed income, I don't pay any attention to my bill to see that I got hijacked by the municipality. And I start paying, even if it's $15 more a month, that's not good. And they're starting to realize that. And that's one of the things that we said here from day one, that was gonna happen. So they made that a short conversation too, because I don't like to hear that they're wrong. EMS, that was just kind of an update of how's everybody doing. And it's really no change than what we've all been experiencing over the past year. It sounds like, and it was funny because it sounded like Tarrytown was doing a little better, but then I think the next day or the day after, we had 2 mutual aid calls in Tarrytown. So that was another fable. And then number 6, the Route 9 has nothing to do with us. And then the next meeting is on the 16th, and it's here in Elmshire. That's all I got. And their dinner was very nice.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any progress on that Edgemont Village Corporation?
I really don't know the answer to that. I know that they were think that they had redesigned their map. I think most of their signatures they were able to add to, but there's two. Over the summer or before the summer, two bills were passed in the Senate, one in the Senate, one in the Assembly, to change the whole process. And really to make it, I can send you a link that came out today from the Empire Center, or did, I think it might.
You did.
Yeah, I did.
You sort of trying to really roll together.
Which is gonna make it very difficult going forward. But I don't believe that those laws are signed into law that they'll apply to Edgemont. So going forward, they still have a good chance to become a village if they proceed that way. You know, one of the things that we did discuss at the meeting was that their financial reports and they're missing a lot of things that you know, I think they know it's gonna cost more, but it's gonna cost a whole lot more than they think.
Before, the reuse of the fire chief's car.
Chief? You have the floor.
What I'm asking is for the board to let me to keep that car instead of giving it to the highway shop or the water shop. What has changed in the past is when you go to training, the members used to go up there with this turnout gear. Now they have to bring equipment with them. So I've been having them use the utility because the equipment is saws, it's gas can, you know, it's stuff that you don't want to put in your personal car. So the new car is almost complete, and I like to keep the car that I have. It's a 2012, it's got 100,000 miles on it. And turn that into a utility car for members when they go into training, that they can put the equipment in that car. So it doesn't, they don't bring home all the debris and everything to their families in their personal cars. I think it's a safer thing, health-wise for them, for our members, and for a safety issue. Because like I said, right now, they're taking the utility, which is a bigger truck, to these training sessions. And some of them are here in the county, some of them are in Orange County, Rockland County. I'd rather have a vehicle, a smaller vehicle for them to drive, which is easier to drive, and they can hold the equipment that they need.
Listen, your car is the oldest car?
My car is the oldest car, yes.
Trustee Andrew, okay with this? Okay with that?
Yes.
Trustee Coffey?
Yes.
Trustee Evans?
Okay.
Trustee Lopez?
Absolutely.
Good luck with your. Anyone else for the work session? Motion to adjourn the work session?
Just one thing, I think we run into a bit of a problem with the church. They put that sign up. It doesn't meet the code. So I don't know if they were approached to Tony, anybody from the church or
We've asked them 1,000 times to get a permit.
Right.
Wait a minute, it just went up.
And
Yeah, well, apparently somebody told me.
You know,
I know, well, I used to do a lot of farm, and I would have told or steered them, said, look, get a permit and go through. I think, we may have to approach Paul above, and, you know, tell them that we have to start taking the steps to legalize this thing.
he is. This, when he was doing the pillars, as soon as the pillars went up, I said to him, what are you doing? He said, sign it, well, get an application, put a permit in. So, okay, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it, and then it was, then the sign appeared up there, and I said, he said he was gonna at least, you know, when the pillars up, at least get that in. I said, well, at least get it in now. You know, it's, the sign's already up. I said, because he did electrical work there too, it's just not the structure of the sign, it's,
Yeah.
you know, electrical permits, they did too.
There must have been something they followed. So, they just put a package together.
Yeah.
Submitted it.
That's what he said.
Because I think we have to go for the zoning, because if this get there.
That's a humongous sign, though.
And
It's huge.
Yeah. Especially if develop or something. Well, I think they probably hit the steel that holds the sign, you know, one soft and one electronics.
So what are we gonna do now? It's gonna have to apply.
Well, I'm gonna go to Paul Bob, I think.
he has the application, just wants to fill it in and get it in, and so we can run it through the process.
Even though the thing is already built.
You know, like my theory, what if tomorrow I get the same application from 7-Eleven? They wanna say slushies on sale, and they want the same sign, how do I say no? They say, hey, they have one, then what do I do? That's the problem.
That was gonna be my follow-up question.
So that's why we have-
You know, now,
The sign is too big, that's the problem, and the type of sign is not allowed.
that's what I.
So, so, I mean, we can go two ways, we can force them to take it down, which I don't think is gonna serve anybody's purpose.
Yeah, but it
But we can force them to legalize it.
Right, if they come in, they give us a reason for having it, all right, then I deny it, I send it to the zoning board. Zoning board reviews it and says, okay, because it's a school, because this. We'll grant the variance, then if anyone else comes along and said, well, they have a variance from the zoning board. They have permission, you know, if you wanna try and go through the same process, you're welcome, but at least
So they
they're
can-
legal then, you know?
So I mean, there is steps.
And the electrical would be expected.
Well,
What I said at the beginning, yeah.
but once it's a full thing too.
I mean, the people that built it, and I'm sure it's built right, because I found out who built it. And who did the electrical, so I'm sure that's all right. I'm not gonna name it now, but their work is good.
Motion to adjourn the work session, all in favor? All carried, please rise upon the pledge of allegiance.